Ever heard of an art festival that uses fashion to tackle really big ideas?
It's not your typical gallery hop.
No, not at all. This one's called steirischer Herbst 24, and it's happening in Graz, Austria. Mark your calendars, by the way, September 19th through October 13th.
Definitely one to check out if you're in Europe this fall.
Absolutely. And the theme this year, horror Patriae,
Which translates to?
horror of the country. And they're exploring it through all sorts of mediums, even using a fashion department store as a venue.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual. You don't often see a department store transformed into a space for social commentary.
Right. Makes you think about how we view these spaces, what they represent.
Exactly. They want to shake up our expectations. And the two pieces we're diving into today, they definitely make you stop and think.
Let's start with Michelle Piguel.
Really fascinating artist.
Her sculptures, White Trash Bag, #1 and #2, are impossible to ignore.
She's known for work that's very direct, very in your face.
And these are no exception. Picture this. You walk into this gallery, and there are these giant trash bags.
But these aren't your average trash bags.
No. They're filled with concrete, so they're solid, heavy. But here's the thing. They're wearing traditional Austrian folk costumes.
You can't look away. It's so jarring. I mean, you've got this very specific type of clothing, often associated with a certain kind of...
Romanticized image.
Yeah, exactly. Rural purity, a simpler time, that kind of thing. And then it's juxtaposed with these...
Trash bags.
Yeah, literally trash bags. And not just any trash bags, right? White trash bags. That term, it carries a lot of baggage.
So she's making a statement right there in the title.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's confrontational. It forces you to think about who is deemed trash in our society, whose traditions are valued and whose are dismissed.
And that material choice, the concrete.
So heavy, so industrial. It's the opposite of delicate embroidery and fine fabrics. It's like she's saying, this is weighty. This history, these stereotypes, they have real-world consequences.
And you can't ignore them, just like you can't ignore these sculptures.
Especially relevant today, don't you think? With the rise of nationalism globally, this romanticizing of the past, it's easy to get swept up in those narratives. Piguel's work encourages us to take a step back and really examine those images, those ideas that we often take for granted.
To ask ourselves, who benefits from these narrow definitions of identity and belonging? And at what cost?
No.
Okay, so from concrete trash bags, let's move on to something completely different.
A total 180.
This is Thomas Verstraeten's piece, Wanderlust Warenhaus. And it plays with our expectations in a really, really interesting way.
You think you're walking into a department store,
But you're not.
not exactly.
Instead of racks of clothes and mannequins, imagine this. You step inside and there's a mountain landscape.
A whole mountain landscape right there in the middle of the store.
Trees, rocks, maybe even a little waterfall.
And the sounds, you hear birds chirping, water flowing.
Like they really committed to creating this whole sensory experience.
It's disorienting. You expect one thing, this very specific environment associated with consumerism.
Right, like the opposite of nature.
Exactly. And then suddenly you're surrounded by this fabricated natural world.
It makes you question it all, doesn't it? Like, why do we crave these experiences, these escapes into nature? And what does it say about us that we're trying to recreate them within these temples of consumerism?
And the title Wanderlust Warenhaus, it kind of sums it up, right? That desire for exploration, for escape.
Wanderlust usually has these positive connotations, the sense of adventure, but here...
It takes on a different meaning. It makes you think about how that longing for nature, for something authentic, it can be exploited.
How so?
Well, think about how often you see nature used to promote a very specific agenda.
Like in advertising.
Sure, but I was thinking more along the lines of nationalism. Politicians using images of pristine landscapes, majestic mountains to evoke this sense of national pride.
Oh, right. It's their way of saying, this is ours, this defines us.
Exactly. And it creates this sense of ownership over nature, which can be dangerous.
Because it creates divisions, us versus them.
Exactly. And by putting nature in a department store, a place so associated with globalization, with the opposite of national boundaries.
Verstraeten's forcing us to confront that contradiction.
He's making us ask, who really owns nature? And can we ever truly possess it?
Such a powerful message, especially in this context. It's wild, isn't it? You've got these two completely different artistic expressions, but they both make you think about these big, complex ideas.
It's true. Concrete-filled trash bags, a mountain landscape inside a department store. You don't see that every day.
Not at all. But that's what's so great about this festival, right? They're pushing boundaries.
Definitely. Making us think critically about things we might otherwise just glance over.
And it's not just about the visual impact either. It's the ideas they're grappling with. National identity, belonging, how we define ourselves. Those are things that resonate with everyone on some level.
Absolutely. And I think it's really interesting how both artists use fashion as this lens to explore those themes.
Yeah. Because on the one hand, fashion is so personal, right? It's how we choose to present ourselves to the world.
Right. It's about self-expression.
But then it's also tied to all these larger forces like consumerism, globalization, cultural expectations.
Totally. Think about those traditional Austrian costumes in Pagel's piece. They carry so much meaning, so much history. And she's directly challenging those associations, forcing us to see them in a new light.
And then you've got Verstraeten setting his whole performance in this temple of consumerism, this space that's all about trends and what's in. Makes you wonder how much of our identity is shaped by those external forces, those messages we're bombarded with every single day.
It's a tough question. Do we even realize how much those things influence us, how we see ourselves, how we see the world around us?
And ultimately, that's what I love about art like this. It doesn't give you answers, but it makes you ask those questions.
It sparks a conversation.
Exactly. So for anyone listening who's feeling inspired, I highly recommend checking out images from the steirischer Herbst Festival online. You can find them on their website. And just scrolling through, getting a sense of the scale and the details, it's really something else.
It's worth it. Even if you can't be there in person, the images alone are powerful.
They really are. Yeah. And as you're looking at those images, think about this. How can art and fashion help us to reclaim our own narratives, our own identities in a world that's constantly trying to define us? It's something to think about anyway. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and keep those conversations going.